What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode. I am Dr. Mike Axler, PhD in kinesiology and applied physiology, professor of exercise science, and 60-plus time marathoner and ultramarathoner. Let me ask you all a question, as we always do. Have you ever heard of Zone 2 training? If you're watching this video, if you've run, biked, swam, done triathlons, are involved in that community, I'm guessing this is something you've heard of. Obviously, if you've watched my other videos or you follow me on Instagram, which you should totally do right now, you've definitely heard of Zone 2. So further on that, assuming you have heard of Zone 2 training, let me ask you, do you do it? Because I've had a lot of friends and even clients who've run marathons, half marathons, ultra marathons, who don't really care. They just go based off of effort, and that's completely fine. But for those of you who did answer in the affirmative, are you actually training correctly? Like, do you train objectively with your heart rate through a heart rate monitor of some sort, like a chest strap, or the radial heart rate with like a watch? Or is something for you like is every day an easy run, but you go out and you look at your heart rate, it's like 150 to 170? Or also, like, do you just not care? So for all the folks who want a hearty mix of both endurance chit-chat, because let's be honest, the endurance community, the runners, the bikers, the cyclists, the rowers, they love talking all things racing season. For all of you folks out there who want some endurance chit-chat, as well as some of the deep exercise science from an exercise science professor, this one's going to be for you. So today we are going to obviously be talking about Zone 2, but we'll be talking about heart rate targets, lactate clearance, mitochondria, Bill Nye for a shout out here, VO2 max, and much more. So without further ado, let's crack on. Right, so what is Zone 2 training? I'm going to answer this objectively and subjectively. Objectively, Zone 2 training is low intensity aerobic effort just below the first lactate threshold point, so LT1 for all of you exercise science folks out there. And objectively, this is going to correspond to around 1.7 to 2.0 millimoles per liter of blood lactate. And we know blood lactate is going to slowly accumulate in the blood when exercise intensity goes up. Or also, Zone 2 is going to be measured as around 60 to 75% of your heart rate max. And we're going to talk about how to calculate that later and what it could be for you. And what I love about like the Zone 2 objective definition is also going to be, this is going to be just below the crossover point between fat oxidation and carbohydrate oxidation. And what that means is that right now, if you're just sitting down watching this video, your heart rate's around 50 to 70 to 80, you're breathing through your nose, you're chilling out, your main primary fuel source is going to be triglycerides or stored body fat. So congratulations, your intensity is low enough right now where you're burning through stored body fat to stay alive. If you start jogging and then running and lifting weights and doing something very, very intense to the point where your heart goes above a Zone 2, above 75% of your max heart rate, then you're burning off carbohydrates. That is called carbohydrate oxidation. So when you're staying below that Zone 2 threshold, before that lactate 1 threshold that we talked about, you're burning off primarily fats or triglycerides, and anything above that, you'll be burning off carbohydrates. Subjectively, Zone 2 is marked by speaking in full sentences. You're not going to be rambling per se if you're like jogging with someone, if you're on the bike or on the stair stepper, but you can totally have a conversation. And this is one of my favorite things to do when I'm at the gym and I'm either jogging on the treadmill, I'm hitting the stationary bike or on the stair stepper, especially on the weekends. This is like a great time for me to call my parents or call my older brother or call a friend I haven't spoken with in a while. If I know that I can have like an hour and a half long conversation while on the stair stepper with one of my family members, and I'm still going, and I can answer their questions and hear what they're saying, I'm at a Zone 1 or Zone 2, and I'm at a really good spot. Anything over that, we're going to be going up into the zone 3, and we do not want that. And it's important to note here with answering that question of what is zone 2, this is not typically going to be based on effort or your desired race finishing time from a chart you found online. This is based on sound physiology. The amount of people who I have coached over the years who are like, oh, my easy run's supposed to be at a 7:30 pace if I want to finish an 4-hour marathon, because I think a 4-hour marathon is like an 8-minute pace, or a 3:30. 3:30 is like an 8-minute pace, something like that. And if you have a desired race finishing time of like 3:30 for a marathon, not only is that a pretty audacious goal to have, but you can't take your physiology right now where your zone 2 is like an 11-minute pace and just say it's going to be an 8-minute pace. Zone 2 is based off of where your cardiovascular, respiratory, and musculoskeletal systems currently are, not where you want them to be. But if you follow how to train zone 2 correctly, you can totally rock your race finishing time. So let's keep going. So what is the importance and what is zone 2? What is the importance of zone 2 and what does zone 2 actually do for us? So we have 3 big things here that zone 2 is going to do for us. Number 1, and it's going to be number 1 for a reason, is increasing mitochondrial biogenesis. If we remember from middle school and high school and probably college if you took biology, the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell or the engine of the cell. We know that. But we have many mitochondria in each of the cells in our bodies. I don't think the germ cells, but I think every other cell in our body has mitochondria. Anyway, we're not only going to have one mitochondria, but many. And when we practice zone 2 training, we're going to build up more mitochondria. And that's what's called mitochondrial biogenesis. Genesis means to begin, right? So this is awesome because it's almost like adding a second engine in your car, or a third engine, or a fourth engine, or a fifth engine down on the line, right? So the more mitochondria you build up with zone 2 aerobic training, the easier it is to exercise. Awesome. The second thing that zone 2 does for us very, very well is increasing fat oxidation capacity. As we had said, when you are just sitting down, relaxing, and your heart rate is very, very, very low, and you're not doing any intense, strenuous work, you're primarily burning off stored body fat, or triglycerides is what they're called, the storage form. But when we start exercising a lot more intensely, up to a zone 3, zone 4, zone 5, we are only burning off carbohydrates. That's not a bad thing. But the good thing is with zone 2, we can push up that range of heart rates or ranges of intensity at which we can continue to burn fat. And why this is advantageous is that we have thousands and thousands of calories worth of stored body fat on our body at all times. If you have 30 extra pounds of fat, which isn't like too much, keeping in mind that 1 pound of fat is equivalent to 3,500 calories. If you have 20 pounds of fat on your body, just multiply that by 3,500, and that's thousands and thousands of calories that you have as a reservoir or a bank of fuel source to make sure that you don't die of starvation. So if you can push up your fat oxidation capacity with zone 2, the longer and longer and longer and longer you can exercise without a ton of fuel. And this gets even better, especially during like half marathons, full marathons, ultra marathons, when your glycogen tank, which is carbohydrates, runs low, you can start to burn off more fat. That's called metabolic flexibility. So it is awesome to train in zone 2 when you train correctly. And number 3 of the benefits you get with zone 2 training is the ability to enhance lactate clearance and recycling. We don't build up lactic acid when we do very intense exercise. We build up lactate and then hydrogen ions together in a nice bond or a nice pair. The hydrogen ions, or that acidity, ends up getting buffered out by bicarbonate and other things in the blood. But lactate actually gets shuttled back to the liver via the Cori cycle, and that ends up getting recycled back as glucose for more fuel, more fuel, more fuel. The way I like to say this is that LeBron is one of the fastest players in the NBA, but he has one of the slowest average speeds. Like the average speed of him on a court is around a walking pace, around like 2.8 miles an hour, because you'll see him dribble with the ball and go slam dunk on everyone, like all the way up the court, but then he'll walk back on defense. And he's like super, super, super lazy, but he's quick when he needs to be, which is why he's one of the greatest of all time. He'll build up a ton of lactate during that sprint, but as he's walking back, all of that lactate gets shuttled to the liver, it gets recycled as glucose in the Cori cycle, and boom, he can keep going on the court. How this works for you is that if zone 2 enhances our lactate clearance ability and our recycling ability, you just get more and more and more efficient at clearing out lactate, using it as a fuel source as glucose, and getting back to the action. And this is what is awesome about doing intervals like zone 4, zone 5 intervals, so you can just have that repeat sprint ability, but zone 2 also does that really, really, really well. So all of this is to say, when we do zone 2 training correctly and efficiently at around 80% of our week at zone 2, we just become better all-around endurance performers, and we're better able to increase our aerobic efficiency, which means with oxygen. So you'll be running ahead away from the pack, and you'll just be nicely going this and that, while everyone else is anaerobic and huffing and puffing. So that is how zone 2 can benefit you. But the big problem with zone 2 is that most people do it incorrectly. So the first way that people practice zone 2 incorrectly is by training in this zone 3 no man's land or land of the lost. I'm going to put it as land of the lost. It's one of my favorite movies. Chaka, right? So zone 3 we know is going to be far too hard to be quote unquote easy, but it's also far too easy to be considered hard. But most people, and there is ample amount of scientific data to support, most people train in zone 3, which is going to be way too hard to be zone 2. And this is based off of race finishing times, incidences of burnout and injury, Strava data, Apple Watch data, self-reported data. Most people fall within that zone 3, which is not good. And the reason why people typically fall into that zone 3 of training is because ego leads to pushing too hard. Just like, I love Strava, but Strava has made this 1,000 times worse. One of the worst things that you can do as an endurance athlete is upload all of your stuff to Strava and then start liking everyone's stuff, and then they like all of your stuff. Because what ends up happening is that people just start looking at pace. And I look at every one of my friends on Strava who are like trying to run half marathons, full marathons, ultra marathons, and every single solitary day of the week, it doesn't matter if it's an easy run, a tempo run, an interval run, a long run, everything is between like 150 to 165 beats per minute. That's all in the zone 3 to zone 4. And that's every single solitary day. And then year after year after year, they make no progress. And if you want to see like some really fun data on this, just go to any running club, whether it's like a Thursday night or a Friday morning. Go to the running club, and everyone's going to be within that like 140, 150, 160 beats per minute, and they're going to tag whatever the running club name is, whatever like the group of it is, and everyone's going to say easy run, and everyone's heart rate's in like a zone 3, zone 4. This is actual data. Look it up. It's actually like really funny. Next time, just go to a running club. And what ends up happening when people do too much zone 3 training again and again and again is that heart rate ends up drifting upwards due to fatigue, overheating, just pushing too hard. This is something called cardiac drift. And this can lead to burnout, sickness, injury, decreased ability time, and just not being able to make long-term positive adaptations over time. So don't be caught in zone 3, train zone 2 effectively. Awesome. On to the part of how to train zone 2 properly. We're going to split this up into an objective way of doing this and a subjective way of doing this. Objectively, what you can do is get something like a heart rate monitor, like a watch. I feel like most people have any type of watch or even a chest strap. And what you're going to want to do is calculate your heart rate max. Your heart rate max is going to be 220 minus your age, and then you're going to multiply that by 0.6 to 0.75. So if you're 30 years old watching this, just an average, your zone 2 is going to be between 114 and 143 beats per minute. Maybe you already follow this. Maybe you go way overboard. Again, most of my clients, most of my friends, most of my students will run always at 160 to 170, which is way too hard, and you will never make progress at that. Zone 2 is between 60 to 75% of your max heart rate. So do that for yourself. And then subjectively, can you breathe through your nose or have a conversation? Not exactly ranting in the conversation, but having a nice ping-ponging back and forth. So objective way to measure zone 2 and a subjective way to measure zone 2. We had said previously that you're going to want to spend around 80% of your week training at zone 2 and around 20% of your week training between zone 4 and zone 5. So what you can do is, depending on your starting point, you could do around 30 to 45 minutes of a zone 2 session, 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 times a week, and then slowly build that up to 60 to 90 minutes. And if you are someone who's doing this for the very first time, like I've had a lot of clients really kind of train in zone 2 for the first time, and they'll complain, oh, my heart rate kept going way out of whack. I kept running way too hard. That's okay. What you're going to do is you're going to take walking breaks. Run for 3 or 4 minutes. Walk for 1. Run for 3 or 4 minutes, walk for 1. You're not too good to take a walk. No one is too good to take a walk. If it means doing that in order to keep your heart rate in zone 2, then do that until you start finding that groove in order to train at zone 2 correctly. And lastly on this, on how to train for zone 2, you can also avoid caffeine and stimulants before your zone 2 workout, because as we know, depending on the amount of caffeine you have, if you get jittery, if you're dehydrated, your heart rate can trend up, and it can be hard to stay back within that zone. Awesome. So why does zone 2 matter for longevity, fat loss, and performance? Number 1, as we had said before, improving metabolic flexibility. So zone 2 allows us to burn off both carbohydrates as fuel as well as fats as fuel, so your body fat. So hopefully I have your attention there, is that when you do more zone 2 training, which isn't super systemically taxing, like it's not going to wipe you out the next day, unlike doing intervals, is that you can burn more body fat and use that body fat as a fuel source while doing your strength training. And what ends up happening is that your body composition enhances, so you have a higher amount of muscle mass and a decreased amount of fat mass. And that is awesome from the longevity standpoint, because a less than advantageous body composition does equate with future cardiometabolic diseases. Awesome. We know with VO2, we know with zone 2 training that this can boost VO2 max over time. And if you watch one of my previous videos or listen to my podcast, I talk a lot about VO2 max as it is the best indicator of longevity. And we had said VO2 max is a measure of your aerobic capacity, and it's how well your heart, lungs, and muscles, or cardiovascular, respiratory, and musculoskeletal systems all work together. So you can jack up your VO2 max, live longer, and just be healthier when you train in zone 2 correctly. And last reason on why zone 2 matters is that it can help reduce chronic inflammation. So as we'd said, it is kind of hard to overtrain on zone 2, but you can still make a lot of progress. When I was running a bulk of my ultras, I was putting in easily 100 miles a week during my PhD. And I talked about this in my book, which you can find below, as well as like on other videos, where I'd wake up every day at 3:30 a.m., I'd start my watch at 3:58 a.m., and I'd stop my watch at 6 a.m. So I would run for exactly 2 hours and 2 minutes, and I would run anywhere from like 12 to 13 miles. My saying was a half marathon before the sun came up. The reason why I'm telling you this is I only slept 4 or 5 hours a night while putting in a half marathon in the morning, followed by a lifting session in the afternoon, or an additional hour run in the afternoon. So easily I was running 12 to 18 miles a day with 4 to 5 days of strength training during my PhD. And I kept this up for 3 full years, racked up about 45 marathons, around 20 ultras, and I never overtrained, never overreached. Yes, I only did zone 2 training. I should have put in more intervals. But again, my focus was on finishing the PhD, being healthy, and then having sustained energy throughout the day. So it's very, very hard to overtrain on zone 2, as it can reduce chronic inflammation and just increase the health and longevity of your cardiovascular, respiratory, and musculoskeletal systems. Awesome. TLDR. Zone 2 is very low intensity, yet it has a very high ROI. Huge return on investment if you're not an acronym person. Most people train too hard and miss the point, so they're leaving gains on the table. Please, 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 one of my goals every year on like January 1st is to make my easy runs easier and my harder runs harder. I try and do zone 2 around 115 to 120 beats per minute, and I try and max out my hard runs as hard as I can, increasing that margin here. So I'm doing it correctly, and you should have that goal too. Third, focus on staying aerobic to build a real and efficient engine that lasts for years. Remember, we're not just in this for now, for like a race coming up or you dieting. You're in this for the long haul. And lastly, as it is, of course, please subscribe for the most up-to-date scientific information for this YouTube channel, my podcast, my Instagram, my Substack, where I put in little bite-sized pieces of nutrition, longevity, aging research, exercise science, strength and conditioning, all the rest of it every single day of the week. And also please like, subscribe, as I said, and share this with a friend who might want to see this video and who might need to see it. Awesome. So with that, thank you for tuning in. And it is about that time of day again to go and hit the gym. I am hopefully going to have a great session. Hopefully you will as well. And as always, consistency wins. And I'll see you all in the next episode.